Remember Oshihiro, that weird-ass game where you fight around with glow sticks? Remember Sushi Soul Universe, that weird-ass game where you put your life on the line for the sake of sushi? Same developers and or publishers. This time around I'm gonna tackle Revive of the Moon, also by Regista, released in 2024 for PC in the US and worldwide for the Nintendo Switch. Sadly, this game is nowhere near as weird, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game at all. The game starts off with some characters riding the train like everything is normal until a catastrophe happens. Mitsuki and her brother Takuya are the only ones that gain consciousness again and find themselves in a train full of seemingly dead people. For a second there I thought this would go the Dragon Head route. If you've never seen that movie from 2003 Japan, then I recommend it. Trying to escape to the surface, they come across some creatures later called Crimson Bees. To make it short, they are just zombies. On the surface, Takuya falls victim to those creatures, and while Mitsuki tries to save him, a young man called Ryuta comes into play and forces her to run away, because if she gets bitten by a zombie, then there is no salvation. Thus, Mitsuki sadly lost her brother for good. With no real direction to where they should go now, Ryuta suggests to go find his mother that supposedly is in Mitaka. Along the way they find Tsubame, who joins the group. They learn quite a lot about the cause of the zombie epidemic, and now they actually want to try to stop it instead of just trying to survive. In short, that's about it. However, the story is a bit richer than this and kind of interesting, mainly because of a specific reason. Yes, there will be a few characters that die along the way. Mitsuki is the victim in all of this, also because of the characters that die, and in a way, yeah, you kind of feel bad for her. Even though the effect the developers wanted to go for when somebody important dies could have been amplified by a bit, making a bigger impact. Not an impact on Mitsuki, but an impact as a scene, so the player feels more involved in the story. The characters work quite fine together, but I think Tsubame didn't need to exist. Not because she's a bad character or anything, more because she doesn't have as much of an importance as Mitsuki and Ryuta have, especially considering the folktale this game decided to tackle, which is the part that makes this game kind of interesting. Ever heard of the folktale Taketori Monogatari? It's a well-known folktale in Japan and it has been adapted quite often in movies, games and other media, so here's another example. I won't go into the folktale itself, I will leave a link in the description if you want to know more about it. It's quite an interesting story, but it was kind of nice how they adapted it here, mainly because it wants you to know more about the folktale itself, at least if you know that the game's story is based on a folktale in the first place. In a way, the game stays true to the tale, but in a different way, well, obviously, it takes its own liberties with it. However, they only go halfway with the story, never actually telling the whole thing. Well, the game isn't long enough for that anyway, I guess, since it's only about 5 to maybe 6 hours total, and you know, creative liberties and something. Though I found it a bit questionable why the developers turned Prince Ishitsukuri into a seemingly woman. I mean, look at those tits, and Minister of the Right Abe no Mimuraji, also known as Abe no Miyoshi, into a cross-dresser, but okay? I just don't see the point of it, but maybe there is information about the actual folktale and those characters that I don't know about. I won't show it, but the last scene with Mitsuki, Ryuta and Tsubame was actually quite nicely done, and during the end credits, there will be a bit more visual storytelling about Kaguya Hime no Mikoto, which was a nice addition, but obviously it deviates from the real thing. So you play as Chibi Mitsuki that could have used a few facial expressions because she has none, only as a drawn character, and the drawings are quite nice. But considering the game's other issues, this is the least of our problems. The lack of facial expressions is still kind of distracting though. She fights with her katana and slashes her enemies like it's nothing. When Tsubame joins the group and you change to play with her, which happens on the fly outside of boss battles, where you have to play with Mitsuki, then you can shoot everybody around. But the aiming is very weird because you need to be in a certain distance to the enemy to even be able to aim directly at him. But even when you try to do that, the cursor feels awkward to control, as if the game can't decide if there is auto aim or not. As a result, you will have a bit of difficulty aiming, especially when the enemies are in higher places. This is why, for the most part, I simply use Mitsuki, because her sword is more than enough for almost anything outside of slashing the enemies that are up high, because her slashes don't go that far. Ryuta himself doesn't fight, and that's just another reason why I think Tsubame wasn't a necessary character at all. Because Ryuta could have been a fighter as well, fighting from the distance with guns, but I guess the game necessarily needed 3 characters for some reason. Walking around, there will be items lying on the floor for you to pick up, from food that you need to refill your health, that you can even stock up if your health is already full, or ammo for Tsubame. Defeated enemies can also leave those for you, just pick them up. But considering how easy the game is, they could have toned down the amount of items you can get. Maybe get them only from defeated enemies, or only by finding them. Or heck, leave it as is, but add a hard or even expert difficulty to the game. Another weird thing is how you don't use the buildings that are around you more often, in the sense of you being able to enter and explore around. I wouldn't have a problem if there were no buildings you could enter in the first place. I mean, this is a budget game after all. But on a rare occasion, you can enter a building and possibly find another item or so. And you see, that's why I think the game seems kind of inconsistent. Tsubame shoots a few times before she has to reload, but she reloads fast. Mitsuki, however, has a katana right here, and every time she attacks, this bar goes down. If it reaches 0, then you can't attack, so just run around for a bit to auto-refill this bar, which also happens fast. The game tries its hand on stealth as well for some reason. You can crouch and try to avoid the enemies, but who would want to do that? The game wasn't made for it at all, and it shows. Still, the developers sometimes force you to crouch around to make use of the stealth mechanic, which would be fine if they still gave you the option of either crouch or fight, or maybe fight once you were discovered. But in the missions where they force you to crouch as soon as you are found, then you have no chance of surviving at all. And this is weird because up until then you could kill everything that appears in front of you, but suddenly your hands are tied and the enemies are the same. This is just another inconsistency. Sure, you can stealth outside of those missions that force you to stealth, but why when the game is so damn easy? It's kind of cool though how these moons represent your HP bar, and if you collect enough of these balls, then this bar fills up. Once full, then you level up, so yes, is your XP bar. Do that and you get a point. With it, you can choose to enhance your offensive power, defensive power, or agility, and unless you die to replay the stages over and over again, you will never be able to go up to max on all 3. Yes, if you die somewhere, this bar will not go down to how it was before the level you died on started. Thus you can die and defeat everybody again as a way to grind it out. Well, almost. An enemy has to kill you at the end, so he needs to stay alive, of course. But honestly, you don't need to, because all bosses are really easy to beat, even the final boss. Sure, you have to dodge a lot of attacks and counter, but still they are rather easy and it doesn't require much skill at all to beat them. Heck, the whole game is easy, too much so. Sure, there is an okay variety of enemies with runners, shooters, giants, some that use melee weapons, but still, with Mitsuki everybody is very easy to defeat. With Tsubame it can be a bit annoying, but only because of the aiming mechanic. There is an existing endless mode and a time trial mode that they will add later on. Or maybe it's already there by the time of this video, because this is the latest version I've played, 1.1.0. But really, considering the issues the game has, especially the massive slowdown at times and the constant lack of textures, as you've been seeing throughout this video, then the devs should have said, yeah, you know what? Screw the endless and time trial modes, we will add those once the game is actually fixed. I know this is a very low budget game and I don't mind that at all, especially not with a story like this and an okay battle system. Heck, if I didn't like low budget games, I wouldn't enjoy Oshihiro, Sushi Soul Universe or simple 2000 games at all. But I did and still do. However, it seems to me that the developers rushed the hell out of Revive of the Moon, and as a result we get a little game that could have been, but isn't.